They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. They ought to release them. I call them hostages. Some people call them prisoners. I call them hostages.
A central promise on the campaign trail from President-elect Donald Trump, pardoning supporters convicted of January 6th related crimes. Now, with Trump headed for the Oval Office, that's closer to becoming reality. More than 1,000 people have been convicted or pled guilty to charges related to the attack on the Capitol in 2021, according to the Department of Justice. And in his first sit-down interview since his reelection, Trump suggested many of those convictions could be swept away.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first
Can
day.
issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
You know, by the way, they've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open.
Trump went on to say that there should be people in jail for the January 6th investigation, certain members of Congress who led the investigation into him.
For what they did,
Yeah.
honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think
should go to
everybody,
jail?
anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to
No,
jail?
not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
All right, joining us now to discuss, Kevin Fry, Washington correspondent for Spectrum News, New York 1. Kevin, good morning. Thank you for being here. So a remarkable statement there from Donald Trump led to a remarkable statement from Liz Cheney, who, of course, was in discussion there. It's a very lengthy statement. I'm going to read part of it. She says this, quote, was the worst breach of the Constitution, she's talking about January 6th, by any president in our nation's history. Donald Trump's suggestion that members of Congress who later investigated his illegal and unconstitutional actions should be jailed is a continuation of his assault on the rule of law and the foundations of our republic. There is no conceivably appropriate factual or constitutional basis for what Donald Trump is suggesting. A Justice Department investigation of the work of a congressional committee, and any lawyer who attempts to pursue that course would quickly find themselves engaged in sanctionable conduct. Basically, she's saying if you investigate a congressional committee, you are going against the rules that the bar sets for you. Yeah. What do you see here? And you could see the anger in President-elect Trump's face there around January 6th that perhaps suggests he is actually going to send his Justice Department to do this.
Right. I mean, one, we'll point out that this would not be the first time that, to build off of what Liz Cheney said, that a lawyer for Trump would do something that could be sanctionable and get them disbarred in a certain region. But on top of that, I mean, this is kind of like this weird dynamic, and Trump always has operated in this way, where he can have a lot of softer tones in different parts of the interview, or try to distance himself with some wordplay about, well, that'll be up to them to look into whether or not they'll be doing it. They'll have to decide. I'm not going to be dictating it to them. But at the same time, this was the one mark where he was very explicit in basically saying they need to be in jail, whereas as opposed to kind of sidestepping some of the issue. Clearly, this is something that is frustrating to him. Clearly, he sees this as something that he feels vindicated in doing now that he's won re-election.
So, Kevin, obviously the question, too, that has been at hand, and there was discussion and reporting about it last week ahead of these Trump comments, was whether President Biden is or should issue preemptive blanket pardons to people like those on the January 6th committee. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell was on State of the Union with my colleague Jake Tapper yesterday, and they talked about whether this was a good idea. Let's watch that.
I obviously think that oversight and investigations is one of the most important functions of the United States Congress, a system of checks and balances, and would respectfully disagree with what President Trump has said, that they should go to jail. It'll be interesting to watch this play out. And I also will say, too, I know people are talking about, well, should Biden give them a blanket pardon? But a lot of people don't want that to happen.
Schiff doesn't want it to happen.
More than that, I've talked to many members of the committee because it implies that what they did was wrong and what they were doing was their job.
So this is the central question, because if you're accepting a pardon, you're in many ways acknowledging
guilt that doesn't necessarily exist, or arguably does not exist in this sort of scenario. And this is one of those things where Trump has this incredible ability to float an idea that he certainly has about pardoning himself preemptively or reactively during his own term when he was in power, and talking to his lawyers about it, as he kind of explained in this interview, and then forcing the Democrats, who claim to have the moral high ground in all of this, to then, in response to Trump making all of these threats, suddenly have to look into breaking precedent, forging new territory, and leaving everyone in an uncomfortable position, and then also providing Trump with the groundwork to go ahead and do it himself when he takes office again in a matter of weeks.
Really remarkable situation. Kevin Fry, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, joining us now to discuss, Michael Warren, senior editor at The Dispatch, Lulu Garcia-Navarro, CNN contributor, journalist for The New York Times, Meghan Hayes, former director of message planning at the Biden White House, and Matt Gorman, former advisor to Tim Scott's presidential campaign. Welcome to all of you. So you heard what Kinzinger had to say there. We also received a scathing statement from Liz Cheney, who, of course, really the lightning rod figure on the committee. And this is what she says, quote, "This was the worst breach," she's talking about January 6th, "of our Constitution by any president in our nation's history. Donald Trump's suggestion that members of Congress who later investigated his illegal and unconstitutional actions should be jailed is a continuation of his assault on the rule of law and the foundations of our republic. There is no conceivably appropriate factual or constitutional basis for what Donald Trump is suggesting. A Justice Department investigation of the work of a congressional committee, and any lawyer who attempts to pursue that course would quickly find themselves engaged in sanctionable conduct." Michael Warren, Kinzinger says he's not afraid. Should they be?
I kind of think maybe they should be. I mean, I think if you look at, it's interesting. I watched that entire hour, 16-minute interview with Donald Trump, and there's a part where he says, my retribution will be success when the economy is great, when everything is going so much better, when I've set things. I don't care about the past. And then just a few minutes later, the clip that you just played, he's putting into place, or he hopes to put into place, people like Kash Patel, who, if you listen to what they've said on podcasts and interviews and these sorts of things, they certainly view retribution against specifically the January 6th committee, specifically against the FBI. They view that the FBI has overreached their bounds going after Donald Trump specifically. They're serious about it. Donald Trump may say, they'll have to make those decisions. He's the one putting these people potentially in positions of power. I think we should take it seriously, because they certainly, I'm talking about Kash Patel, but others in the Justice Department, in Trump's Justice Department, potentially, they are taking it seriously.
Meghan Hayes, this obviously plays into the conversation we were having starting last week about possible preemptive pardons for some of these people. Adam Schiff has said he doesn't want one. There would, of course, be some sort of implication of guilt if you accept a pardon like this. How do you think Trump's comments are going to impact that debate inside the White House?
Look, I think this is why they're having that debate, right? I think that people should be fearful, to your point, of what's going to happen. It's not necessarily that they did anything wrong, but they can go after them. They can charge them with things. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. It's not just about what's going to happen if they're convicted, because they didn't commit crime, so they're not going to be. But it's the whole process that's going to take years for this all to play out, and the money that they're going to have to spend. So I understand why the Biden White House is doing this. I understand why this is now a conversation, because the president-elect is making comments basically saying he's going to attack these people.
Lulu, do you think it would be smart of them to do these preemptive pardons, or would it be wrong?
I'm not a believer in the preemptive pardons, because I think what ends up happening is Donald Trump distorts what we consider to be acceptable. And no one has ever done a preemptive pardon before. It would be really pushing the boundaries of what the norms are. He constantly does that. And just in a comment, already they're having this reaction. He hasn't done anything. Kash Patel hasn't been actually put into power yet. And so I do think that Democrats and Republicans who might be targeted probably need to calm down. I agree with Michael that I don't think that this is spurious. It may very well happen. But I think this idea of preemptive pardons and putting Biden in that position, I don't think it's wise.